my horse just slid down that hill that first time and hit my head and was a little concussed. No big deal. I got back on. But that time he crawled up, he tried to walk up the rock, like slab of rock, which I knew was not going to be good, and he just flipped under.
Oh, when I was right behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I managed to get off him and up that rock.
Like a cat.
Without getting crushed under him. I was like, someone listening to this that is into photography and wants to capture better photos for themselves and wants to tell their story better. What do you see wrong with a lot of the photos that you see? In the hunting space specifically.
Rule of thirds, man. Yeah, I think people struggle with that because I think most people who think they're taking a good photo put the subject dead center. For a hunting space, I feel like the rule of thirds, which is, again, it's a rule I break as well. And if you don't know what it is, Google it and find it out if that's what you want to know and master it. Because if you don't understand the rule of thirds and depth of field, there's just certain things that you need to have mastered in order to create. Rule of thirds is your basic composition rule. Like you would learn that in Photo 101 on the first day. Hey!
It's about to get crazy. It's about to go down. It's about to get crazy. It's gonna be loud. This is our house. We do what we wanna. We'll blow the roof up. Everybody's coming. It's about to get crazy. It's about to go down. It's about to go down.
It's better if you have no idea what's coming. Okay? We're just going to go. You ready?
Yep.
All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. We are in the studio with Jay Beyer of Jay Beyer Imaging. And Jay and I just spent a few days, weeks in Canada hunting moose and caribou and stuff.
Yep.
And for those of you who don't know Jay, he's a super talented photographer. And also, Jay, you're a cool dude.
Oh.
I was surprised by that. I wasn't sure if you'd be like this pretentious
what were you expecting?
Video photo guy or someone who's like silently angry a lot, sort of like Barclow.
Like a standard artist?
Yeah, totally. I wasn't sure.
Wears black all the time. Awkward in public.
Right. And hey, I need you to sit still. I'm trying to photo here. Like whatever. You just don't know. And I met you once before at a panel we did with our mutual friend Kendall Card, with Black Ovis and
the opening of Subalpine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we did that up there with. They also have
Corey Jacobson was there, and then you and I and Aaron
Snyder.
Yep.
So I met you there briefly, and then it was off to this Canada hunt. What has it been, a year or so?
Since the Subalpine thing? Mm-hmm. I think that was like 2 or 3 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't get the time to stick around. My son was in a drum. He's played drums in a band, and he had a concert, so I didn't get to stick around and. Because Aaron was asking me a bunch of questions, and I'm like, I got to go. My son's about to go on.
Yeah. Well, and I want to get into some of that here soon. We'll have you kind of introduce yourself, like your background and your resume. But before we do that, like, how's it feel to be home from the savage bush? And not on a horse.
I'm home, and I'm home for almost an entire week. And it feels delightful. I had to start editing this morning from photos I shot back in the end of July when I started the season. And so, like, looking back, I was just like, man, I've been gone hunting on most trips for Sitka since the end of July. That left July 30th, I believe.
Dang.
And I've been home, I think it was like less than 10 days for like 3 months.
Your wife hates you.
My wife loves that I'm gone. No, she's very understanding, and not only did I work hard to get to where I am, my family worked hard to get where I am. I've missed my son's birthday is the end of September, right? So I've missed his birthday because that's elk season, and I'm gone on elk hunts, and he gets it. He understands. Like on the other side of it, I'm around all summer. Like I try to take most of the summer off. I take his Christmas vacation off. I take his spring break off, and we get really good quality family time. We don't get the day to day, and my wife's fine with it. She's just understands that this is what I worked to get to do. And hunting season and then ski season are my two really busy times. And then everything else I don't have quite as much. But I know like hunting season just piles up, and same with skiing from January to mid-April. I'm pretty crazy. So I kind of get the November to December chunk kind of free. And then
that's kind of how it is for me too. I'm gone for, I don't know, from the end of August till the first week or so of December. And then a little bit in the springtime for turkey and bear, if I go to New Zealand or someplace, that spring is usually a hunting season. And so, but the rest of the time I'm home, I'm home all the time.
And you're home. You're not like, I look at families and they have like the standard 9-to-5 work week, and then they come home. And when I'm home during the week and my son's in school and my wife's working, there's so much going on with my son in drums and soccer and his ski stuff and usually do martial arts, and there's shuttling around and carpool, and it's not quality time. Everyone's life is happening, and that's great. And we're closer to each other, but it's not like summer when my son and I can go for a month-long road trip if we want.
There will be gals that'll come up to my wife and say, "Hey, Suzanne, how can you stand it that your husband's gone for the whole month?" And her response has been, I see him more now than I did before, or at least it feels like it. So yeah, I'm gone for like a whole month nearly, but then when I'm home way more than I used to be, because when you work in the morning, I leave before my kids even got out of bed, really, or we got up and didn't really say much to each other, and I'm gone. I work till 4 or 5 o'clock. And then I would come home, get home around 6. We'd have some dinner. The kids would do whatever they need to do, and we're in bed by 9. I didn't spend a lot of time during the week with my kids. Mm-hmm. I was working. And the way it is now, I spend way more time with my kids and my family. Mm-hmm. And I have the freedom to do so because of the nature of what I do.
Yep.
So I like it.
I think it's a higher quality of time.
Yeah. So, Jay, let's get into Jay a little bit.
Oh, fun.
So, Jay, you haven't really been hunting a real long time.
Well, I grew up hunting. I grew up bird hunting in Alaska. That was
How old are you?
I'm 41.
Okay.
I was born in Canada, in Alberta, and I moved to Alaska when I was 7, where we lived on the outside of town in Fairbanks.
So do you have dual citizenship?
Yes.
I hate you.
Yep. So then, when we lived in Alaska, my older brother and myself were more into birds. We'd shoot grouse and ptarmigan out of the front yard, and we'd kill squirrels and
small game.
Yep, just small game. We fished a lot, and my dad was into ptarmigan hunting, so we'd go on the weekends occasionally, and we'd shoot birds, and then he was just getting into big game when I was 12 or 13. He shot his first moose when we lived up there, and then we moved at I was 13 and a half. I was almost 14. We moved to Wisconsin, and then I took a long hiatus from hunting because of there was no place to hunt in Wisconsin. We didn't know people with private land, and it was just at that age where we just kind of fell out of it and just didn't do a whole lot with it. And then I had a little stint in college where I had a couple of buddies that were into it, and we'd go out and not get anything.
Yeah.
It was kind of the standard, like I didn't know what was going on. And then there was a lot of years, and then, what was it, about 10 years ago? I need to figure out an actual date on it. Mm-hmm. when I actually kind of got into it, and I got pushed into it because my buddy Ryan, and it was because of food, and he kept giving me elk, and I loved it, and I needed it, and he had moved to Tucson for an accelerated nursing program, and I drew a cow tag up by Hannaford, and he came up for 2 weeks to help me get my first elk.
Wow.
And we got an opening morning, my easiest elk hunt ever. Walked about 200 yards, walked another 400 yards, shot a cow, and then packed it back to the truck. And I'm like, well, this is easy.
This is the best grocery getting ever.
I'm like, this is awesome. And that was kind of the start of it. And then shortly after that, I texted a few friends. My buddy Chris was working at Sitka at the time. He was in sales at Sitka. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, check this out. And he was like, you're going to do hunting? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you should start shooting photos of hunting. So then Brinker sent me a bunch of Sitka stuff, and Ranch sent me a bunch of packs. And then I just all of a sudden started shooting my buddy Ryan on these hunts and for the first few years of me shooting hunting, no one would kill anything. And it wasn't for lack of effort.
Yeah.
It was just, I didn't realize that's how hunting went, like how much time and effort you put in. And so then that just grew, my personal hunting grew, my photo hunting grew into where it is today.
So you've been on quite a few hunts in the last, probably more than most hunters in their lifetime.
I would think in the last 5 years, more like bucket list hunts that people would love to do in their lives.
Name some of them.
I got to go on a stone sheep hunt, multiple doll hunts, grizzly hunt.
These are across British Columbia and Alaska?
What's that?
These are in British Columbia and Alaska?
Yep. Doll sheep in Alaska, British Columbia for stone sheep, the Nevada elk, where we go. I can't say where because it's a big secret.
Yeah.
But it's like the most unreal elk hunting I've ever experienced in my life.
Didn't you go to Kodiak with Cole?
Kodiak with Cole from Brown Bear. Yeah, and Kiv. And what else? Oh, the super secret spot for mule deer with South and Kendall. Yeah,
you guys have that in your back pocket. That's heaven
so
on
here's
earth.
When I retire, I'm going to have the best spots out there.
So you've been some places. You're not always able to do the hunting. You're photographing.
Always. Yeah, though I did a caribou hunt in Alaska years ago with some friends, and that was the one I got a tag for. Mm-hmm. And during that hunt, I realized I will never get a tag for a hunt again because it's a conflict of interest in what I'm trying to do. I'm there to shoot the hunt. This is my goal. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I become the hunter. I don't shoot as much. I don't, my goals become because I want to get an animal. Like that's been my goal. And so if I don't have a tag, I concentrate more because if I had a tag, I wouldn't, I wouldn't concentrate
right.
Because it takes a lot of concentration to do this.
So tell me this, like of all those hunts you've been on, what is one that stands out in your mind, or a couple of them that stand out in your mind is like just adventures?
They're all different in their own way, right? I'm really attracted to wide expanses, right? From a photo perspective. So like every sheep hunt is just like, you can drop your camera and you're taking good photos. So it makes your job easy, and it's more like conducive to like my style, what I'm looking to put out there. And by that token, like those mule deer hunts, those high country early season mule deer hunts, we're similar terrain. It's open, all those hunts are amazing. But then when you get into like the elk realm, and you're like stuck in timber for weeks and you're trying to make that look different, that gets to be a little more difficult. So I definitely gravitate to the open, wide expanse country.
How an elk hunt is more conducive to audio video, like format for just capturing something cool where, a mule deer hunt is just, photo gorgeous, or a mountain goat or a sheep.
Yeah.
Would be definitely, it's breathtaking.
Yeah, I'm lucky to go on all. You're lucky too. We're both lucky to go on these and call it work and go to these amazing places and see the things we get to see. And the animals are just. I think that stone sheep for me, when I finally saw the first ram, which was like at 40 yards, we had been sitting here glassing for forever, and the thing just like. I'm like, well, there's nothing around. So I go I'm moving around to shoot photos while we're glassing. And all of a sudden this ram, like 40 yards away, just gets up out of his bed. We had no clue. We had been there for like an hour. And this ram
right
just stands up. And we're like, huh. I look at it and I'm like, oh no. And Cole and the guy we were with look at me and I'm like, right there. And they're like, oh. And it wasn't a legal ram, so it wasn't a big deal. But their coloration.
Yeah.
Dolls are pretty special too. All animals are special, but the coloration of those stone sheep with the backs of their legs are white, and they're just super dark through their body. It was late season, so they're really black, and then they're really gray face. Like they're just such a unique looking. They're like an African looking North American creature, right? They have like that uniqueness of that they get in Africa, and just the wild coloration of anything else out there.
I haven't got the sheep bug yet. Partly probably because I've denied myself even the thought of it, right? Because it's just not in the realm of financial.
Well, yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like I think sheep hunting is probably one of my favorite because I love backpack hunting. You're always living out of a pack. You're dropped off in a really cool spot. It's probably the most like fitness oriented hunts that I do because you're in all different kinds of terrain. And it's just, but I will probably never kill a sheep in my life. I'll put in for Utah. Yeah. And I'll draw when I'm 80 and I'll give the tag to my son.
I know.
And I'll cook in camp while he comes back and tells me everything that happened. But
yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat, I don't know. I'll keep my eyes and ears open. And
I put in at Western every year. I put in for all the Utah sheep hunts.
Yeah.
And they don't,
Cole?
Yeah, right. I'm going to start doing that because that was $75 for a stone sheep hunt.
Yeah. Those raffles and such at all the different fundraising.
This was full Curl Society's raffle at Western. You just put $75 ticket in one of the bins and got his name pulled. And because that was the same thing for him. He could never afford a stone sheep hunt.
You're still in the Less Than One Club.
Yep.
Right? The Sheep Foundation.
Yep.
So there's always that chance.
Yep. There's always the chance.
You kind of need that particular chance if you're gonna get that tag though.
But those sheep hunts are just fun. I just really enjoy every aspect of them, from photography to the fitness to the living out of a pack. And
so a talented photographer. How did you get into the photography scene?
Originally, I was living in Minnesota, in northern Minnesota, and it was post-college, and I was married. And we worked, I worked at a gear shop. I sold climbing gear and snowboards and skis and backpacking stuff. And my wife and I decided to just quit our jobs and live in a van and go climbing until we were done. Turned out to be about 6 months. And she bought a camera because she wanted to document this trip.
How old are you at this time?
I would have been 23. And so she bought this camera and had no clue how to use it. And so I talked to some buddies that kind of knew some stuff from college. And then we went home to my parents' house in Wisconsin. And my dad at that time was like he shot photos all the time. Like that was kind of his big hobby and he loved it. And I'm like, well, Dad, you have to show me how to use this and teach me these like basics so I can help Rachel learn this thing. I don't know, because I love my wife, but she is technologically challenged.
So is my wife.
And it's okay. She understands it. And so like I knew if she was going to use this camera, I would need to figure it out. And once she learns it, she's good, right? I mean, she still struggles with her iPhone. You know, like my son has to do most of the stuff on her phone for her. But so that was the beginning. So she bought this camera. We went on this journey, and it started out as her camera. And by the end of that trip, it was my camera. And I guess I have an adventurous soul. And so I took it on all my climbing and skiing and mountaineering journeys. And I just started accidentally selling photos. And then it just kind of grew from there.
What would you say is your first big job that you got? What was the call like, or how did that happen?
I mean, it wasn't
sudden.
No, because it like I did freelance for so long, and I still do a ton of freelance. So that's basically me funding everything on the front end and then trying to sell photos on the back end. Like I remember having a really big sale to Black Diamond. I had like an ice climbing ad and I had like 2 ski ads, and I got this check for like $8,000, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I could maybe do this as a career.
Right.
Because in the beginning, when I first started selling, it was like it's a hobby and it was fun. And I was pounding nails. I was working in construction in the valley here, and so it was, it was just something I did on the time. I'd go climbing and I'd go skiing and I'd bring my camera and I'd shoot photos and I'd sell them to random magazines and companies. And I always saw like the photos that came out of Patagonia and Black Diamond, like those were like my driving force. I'm like, this is the stuff that I aspire to. These are the brands I want to work for. This is what I want to shoot. I'm like, well, I'll never get there. Like that's
right.
Not like my gig, like I'm just this little guy. I don't have pro climbers and pro skiers to shoot with. I'm just ski touring in the morning before work with my buddies and taking pictures when I can. And they all let me, and it just turned into something bigger. So there was never like a big job. It was a real gradual. I remember that being a really big check. Like I just had no idea like that kind of money was a potential from like taking pictures on trips that I wanted to do. I remember thinking like if I could just pay for my trips,
yeah,
I'd be stoked.
That's where I was at. Like I still had a good job before I started Gritty. And then at first Gritty was really just, it was money I spent on camera gear and video gear and computers. And I was like, man, if I could just get a little bit of money out of this to help pay for some of my gear I've already spent, so my wife won't be so mad at me because I've dropped like $10,000 on stuff. It's like, that'd be cool. And then it went from, well, now it would be cool if I could buy more gear than I have now, and it paid for itself. And then it grew to, man, it would be great if this paid for some hunts. And then the next thing you know, it became it's my job.
Yep.
My career.
Yeah, it was a big step when I quit construction and I just started shooting photos. A big part of it was my wife. My son he was 2, and my wife took a job as a traveling nurse. And she's like, all right, here you go. You got a year. Make it happen. I only have to work 3 days a week. You can do whatever you want 4 days a week. If it doesn't work, call it. We're done, or it's going to go. And it went. So
as you were taking photos and you're doing these, you went full time. Did you ever think you'd be taking hunting photos?
No. I mean, at the time, my passions were rock climbing, ice climbing, ski mountaineering, backcountry skiing. Like that's what I lived. Mountain biking has always been a big one too, and I've always run. And so, but that was the stuff that I gravitated towards. Those were my passions. And then slowly, I faded out of climbing, and I faded out of ice climbing. But I've always been a skier, and then my ski stuff, photo-wise, always did really, really well. And so that was my main, that's what I did. I went to South America most summers and shot winter down there, and I was a ski and snowboard photographer, and that's all I did. for years. And during that time, I would never have even thought of the hunting realm as a client or and I wasn't a hunter at the time. I wasn't partaking in it. And I've always been a firm believer, and I think you need to be 100% passionate about anything you're going to capture as a photographer. Because if you don't understand it, you're not going to shoot it as well, And so, but then when I got switched into hunting, it was kind of pushed on me because I've done all this stuff for these big clients in the outdoor world, and for like Sitka, Mystery Ranch, and Yeti were like my first hunting clients that were just like, yes, what do you need? You're going to shoot hunting. Here you go. Whatever you need. And that was pretty cool to like immediately like, okay, well, I have the best 3 companies in the hunting world right now, and they're my first 3 clients. That's cool.
Right.
So it was nice to get pushed into it, and I loved it. I still love it. And it is actually this year, 2018 will be the first time hunting I've done more of my revenue from the years from hunting than from skiing, which is a weird position to be in, being so long coming from climbing and skiing. And I still shoot mountain biking and trail running and fly fishing, and I love all those things, and I do all those things regularly. But majority of my income is hunt and ski and snowboard.
So I'm just curious, having spent time in the backcountry with you and riding horses and stuff and hanging out, personality wise, you're like easy to get along with. Piece of cake. Like there's nobody goes, man, I hate that Jay Beyer, or he talks
I'm
too
sure
much,
there's a couple people
or
out
shut
there.
up. No, I mean, it was, you're really good with people. And I'm curious to know, how much do you think that's contributed to where you're at today?
I mean, I'm sure it helps. I mean, for any client to send me on a trip with someone they don't know, and to be able to like just step in the situation and hang out with people, and I'm sure I also find a lot of, I mean, not to bag on my profession, but a lot of artists in general are kind of flaky and kind of do their own thing, and as a stereotypical whole, having a personality, we can call it that. Having a personality, it's a lot easier on clients when you can have a beer with them, or
it's like
they want you around, as opposed to like, this is the odd dude we work with, and because he does really good work, I'd like to think that I do good work, and I'm not too bad to hang out with.
Yeah, it's like
I can't imagine it would hurt me in any way whatsoever. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's like having a hunting buddy there. That's easy to. It's like, and you don't really notice, that it sucks to go hunting and spend time, effort, and money, and especially when it's cold. It's you're often hungry, you're fatigued, you're tired, and all these physical needs are kind of not met as well as they are when you're, at home. And so people's tempers get short and people get ornery, but it's nice to have someone there that's not about the cold mornings or any of that.
Well, yeah, from my background, hunting's pretty easy.
Right.
Like the thing.
You're not an extreme athlete if you
as a hunter,
right?
Yeah. So that's the difference, right? So like, hunting seems pretty mellow. Like I really enjoy it, but it's nothing like, when I used to go on like big ice climbing days and I'm hanging off a rope shooting photos and you're 1,000 feet off the ground hanging from an ice screw. You can't feel your legs because you've been hanging in a harness for 2 hours watching this dude climb up. And I enjoyed that at the time as well. But then, all that stuff boiled down to hunting makes hunting seem real relaxed. And maybe I shouldn't say that, but it seems it's a real comfort zone for me.
Yeah.
I don't feel exposed. I don't feel like hunting can get me in any place where the places I've been climbing and skiing, and I've been scared.
Killed people.
I'm scared for my life. I've had friends die, and I don't feel that hunting, and I really enjoy that at this stage of my life. I mean, not my biggest worry would be a grizzly bear, and I feel like that's a controllable situation, you know? Avalanches are a whole nother realm. Ice falls a whole nother realm, you know? And so like dangling around in those mountains at times like that can wear on your soul. And so I'm happy that the hunting's, you know, accepted me and that I'm doing well in that realm, because I still I could never quit shooting skiing. I think this snow in the air is still my first love and will always be. There's just but I'm harder and harder to please. It takes bigger, gnarlier trips to get what I'm looking for, and you know, I know that's what it takes, and that's the work that it takes to get there. But it's, you know, it's still my first love. And it will be, I think, for a long time. I can't quit skiing. I love it.
Yeah.
Way too much.
Well, on the photo side of things, what do you think is, you know, as you see others taking photos and trying to capture their stories, like how do you go about what you do? How do you know what to shoot, what not to shoot, and what is going to be composed well or look awesome and what's not?
Well, I don't. No, I think so. I think a reason I got to where I am in my career is, as I put it real simply for people, like I got real lucky that I was the one that what I think looks cool, it turns out a lot of other people think that looks pretty cool too. And I get requests for interns all the time, you know, and I can look through their websites and look through their portfolios, and it's sometimes you have to give people like the rough truth, like buddy, you don't have it. And I didn't go to photo school. I just picked it up. I read a lot of books, so that would be my photo education.
Right.
But I got lucky. What I think looks cool, turns out other people think it looks cool as well.
Because there's a technical aspect to taking a photo.
Sure,
right?
Absolutely, and that's something you can learn over time. And I've gone through phases in my photography where I've, you know, used filters and super shallow depth of field, and different lenses, and like, you know, and that all helps you. Like they all become like a tool in your toolkit, you know. And so you look at a situation, you're like, well, this is how I want to frame this, you know. And composure is the biggest thing. I think composition is what most early photographers are lacking. And if you can't figure it out and can't make that work, it's not going to be an appealing photo. Like you can't have someone looking out of the right side of the photo and they're on the right side of the photo. Right. You know, like there's just simple things that just you have to catch when you're in the moment. And like for me, I like to be as little impact as possible on whoever I'm photographing, skiers or climbers or hunters. And I want, so instead of me telling them to turn around, which I've done too before, I'll move myself to reposition so that I get the composition I'm looking for. They're doing what they're doing, and it all works out.
Yeah.
So, or it all can work out. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's things that I feel like when I'm running a video camera and then I give it to someone else and I see how they run the video camera, and I'm just an amateur, right? But I have in my mind what I want it to look like. And I remember just filming things and then making a story of a short film at home. And then later learning online, like taking some online classes or watching some people talk about how they film and how you should compose a shot and how you can get these different looks. And I was like, that's a thing. Like you got to teach that. Like the way that I would shoot that is exactly, that's how I shoot it. But no one ever had to tell me that. I could just tell that is how it should be shot and then I'll work with someone else that's really good with the camera, but doesn't see the shot. And so I'll end up with something that's just not good. And then I'll have to explain why you don't take a shot like that and what the problem is. And they're like, oh, okay. But I feel like I don't know how much of that can be learned and how much of it's just instinct.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of both, right? I think I mean, like, photographers in general, half of them went to school for it and half of them didn't. And I mean, some are just as successful as others, and some of them just have it, like, I mean, others, I could never be a pro football player. I don't have it, but turns out, after I never would have guessed my career would have been an artist, like I wasn't, it wasn't like I was doodling in class constantly as a kid. Like I never saw myself that way. I never saw myself as an artist or saw art as a viable career. Maybe was part of it. I came from a very traditional family and, but no, I love it. I feel very fortunate because I think there's a lot of people who want or would love to do what I do. And I love to do what I do. And you can't, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be awesome to be, a pro football player too, I think, or whoever else you look up to, but you can't.
Right. and my question, like, someone listening to this that is into photography and wants to capture better photos for themselves and wants to tell their story better, like, what do you see wrong with a lot of the photos that you see? In the hunting space specifically.
Rule of thirds, man.
Yeah.
Do you know what the rule of thirds is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think people struggle with that because I think most people who think they're taking a good photo put the subject dead center. And any photo, unless it's a portrait, it's a different story.
Right.
Portraits, but for a hunting space, I feel like the rule of thirds, which is, again, it's a rule I break as well.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what it is, Google it and find it out if that's what you want to know and master it. Because if you don't understand the rule of thirds and depth of field, there's just certain things that you need to have mastered in order to create something like that. I mean, the rule of thirds is your basic composition rule. Like you would learn that in Photo 101 on the first day in high school.
Also, though, what I was referring to as being instinctive.
Yep. There's a lot of it that is
you just look at it and you're like, no, that doesn't feel right. Just doesn't. People might ask me, well, why did you take the photo? Because it feels right like that.
Yep. And some people have it, some people don't. And I feel fortunate to be to where I am. And what else could people learn? Those are big things. Like depth of field would be my second, like mastering depth of field and understanding what it does with how lenses change depth of field, how scenery changes depth of field, what you're trying to focus on, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to portray and what you're shooting, makes a big difference. Because I think too many people, and that's why the iPhones all have portrait mode now, right?
Yeah, right.
So they can shoot with a shallow depth of field. People are like, these look amazing.
And then even Instagram.
Because
has the new focus.
Yeah, no one understood, like, all they're doing is a shallow depth of field. Mm-hmm. That's why it feels different. That's why, like, a photo that comes out of my camera, it's not maximized for depth of field, which is what most people want or think is a good photo. When you don't need everything in focus, you don't want everything in focus.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'll run mine for video like that. And getting it took me a while to figure out how to capture the right depth of field. Sometimes, I'll have a subject coming in and out of focus because I didn't really know how it worked, and maybe I just needed that depth of field to be a little deeper if I'm going to film a guy that's walking around and moving and things like that. It took a while to kind of get the hang of that. But again, I guess I do what I think looks good.
Yeah. I'm the same way.
And then I hope other people like what I think looks good.
It's a simple formula, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it looks pretty cool.
Well,
Anyone else think this looks pretty cool?
I also, when I do a film and I'm trying to tell a story, I do the same thing. Like, I tell the story the way I think it needs to be told to be cool and to reach somebody. And then I'll see a hunting film that comes out and I'll be bored out of my mind watching it, going, it's just not there. Mm-hmm. It's hard to put a finger on that stuff. Mm-hmm. Like how to fix that if someone, practice.
That's the beautiful thing about social media too. You can follow a lot of photographers. There's a lot of photographers that are always pushing tips and answering questions, and that's like the basis of their social. And you can learn a lot from that. And you can learn a lot just by looking at a photographer's social. And like, this is someone I look up to, or this is someone I like. And what is it like looking at a photo and being like, what is it about this thing that I'm so stoked on? Like, this is just a photo of a cat or whatever. And I'm like, this is beautiful. Like, what is it? And then to take the elements out and try to figure that out as someone learning, I mean, you can learn a lot, and that's something everyone has access to from their phone. So that's pretty easy. But it still comes down to like an eye and composition, man.
Because when I was, thumbing through your photos that you took on this trip, I'm looking through them, and what I see that's different. I mean, you've got the technical things down. The color is right. The white balance is right. I like the depth of field. I've some of these technical parts of the shot are there, but it's a cool shot. It's not, I don't geek out on the perfection of the photo really. And some of the stuff that I'm sure, because I don't have a lot of experience in photography, I don't see the flaws in photos or in shots that someone with more experience and a more trained eye would have. Mm-hmm. But I can look at a photo and say, oh, I dig that. Mm-hmm. Just like that, And as I'm looking through yours, there's just a lot of that where I'm like, yeah, I just really like that. And I wouldn't have thought to take a photo from that angle, with that object in the foreground and with the snow doing this. And I don't know. It's
paying attention, man. Keeping an eye on the. I mean, I get made fun of a lot because I don't take a lot of photos.
Yeah,
I'm not snapping constantly, but I'm always watching. Right, I want to see that moment. I want to see, when the weather and the clouds and the people and everything lines up. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not just out trying to capture everything and then editing it in the end. When it all lines up, that's when I shoot. And so as a photographer, I think we're just always paying attention to everything, I'm always looking around. I'm always paying attention to the weather, and the foliage and just everything. Like I keep in my mind, I'm thinking about like our moose hunt and like just where the horses are going and where the people are and where the antlers that are on the horse are and how they're all moving and how they're going to move into the shot I want to create in this scene. And then trying to get my horse to cooperate, which was a harder issue.
So on that note, have you ever been on a horseback hunt like that?
Yes, I did one.
With the week before, right?
The 2 weeks before that. So that was like a 30 days of horse for me. Mm-hmm. And I had done a couple single days, my buddy Chris in Montana for elk. Yeah. Just like in and outs on horses. And I did a trip with Amanda a few years ago for Sitka. And both of those trips I knew nothing. I still don't know a whole lot, but those two trips I knew nothing. Yeah. And like watching like Chris and Amanda like dial horses in and get everything, and I'm so used to being a part of helping. I struggle with having people do stuff for me. Yeah. I want to do it. I want to learn. And so this trip, the first trip I was on in BC was for Stone Sheep, and I was with Cole, and then our guide was Luke, and Luke had been around horses his entire life, and I'm like, and I kept asking him questions, and he'd answer them, and he didn't care if I screwed stuff up, and he taught me a ton in that first 2 weeks.
That's cool.
And then going right into this one was the next 2 weeks, and like in a month of riding horses and packing them and learning, I still don't think I could do a diamond on my own. I could get real close, I think.
Yeah.
Blythe had it in it to get me there. She was pushing to teach me like, every day. But it was fun, and it was just unique for me to be in that environment. My dad grew up on a farm and was around horses a lot. I always think of the people in my past that are horse people, and I'm sitting there
clueless
in BC for a month in a saddle.
What did you think of the terrain and the riding we did coming out of that backcountry?
I thought it was great until I turned my headlamp on. The whole day was it was beautiful, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was like fairly mellow riding.
Was it similar to your other hunts, or was this more technical?
That last little bit was gnarlier. We had more kind of steep and descending and uphilling,
Mm-hmm.
but not as bad. We didn't have like the snow and the slippery stuff that we did on here in my hunt.
Okay.
And so there was because we were taking the horses to tree line every day. So think about that. Like if every day we weren't hunting moose in the flats, if we were going up to all those peaks every day, and where trees stop, we tie up a horse and then start
go
hiking
up.
from there.
Yeah.
And so there was much more up and down than what we had. But we didn't have the weather. I mean, we had snow days, but nothing like what we experienced where all the horses were falling over and trying to get down hills. And that was just...
That was a rodeo.
As soon as my horse started slipping, I'm like, what do I do?
Be prepared to bail off.
I've never ridden a mechanical bull before, and this is the only point in my life I'm like, man, I wish I had a secret fetish for mechanical bull riding because I'd be much better off right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was drastically different. And then like on the final trail at whatever 2 miles, like I was just kind of enjoying being clueless, my headlamp off and like hopping
Riding
over
along.
stuff and didn't know what was going on. And then until Barclow's horse fell over and pinned his leg and I turned my headlamp on, I'm like, what? Where are we? What are we walking through?
Yeah.
I mean, like I couldn't even tell where the trail was. There was like boulders up to my hips, and I'm like,
For some backstory, you had a really agile and careful horse.
I loved my horse.
You did. Like your horse was on it
Yep.
and seemed to be very good at picking his way, and you just having a nice, uneventful ride.
Yep.
You know, others weren't as fortunate.
No.
They were on different
Yourself?
critters. I think my horse, he'd done so well throughout the week. I think he just was tired, man. He just was. They were all tired. You know?
I felt bad for Keith on the mules.
Yeah, Keith, it's interesting. Those mules weren't as sure-footed as I expect a mule to be.
Yeah.
But they're also older than Methuselah, so that's
Were they
probably,
old?
yeah, they're old. But then there's, you know, and they live a lot longer than a horse does in general, but they, what was interesting was how they sink in the mud and just give in, you know, just thump. They just go down and they're just like, yeah, I'm just here, and start eating grass or drinking water.
Just like Adam was saying, you just like lay over and start eating, laying on their side, like eating grass, just like, whatever.
That was pretty gnarly. I've been on a lot of horseback rides, a lot of horseback hunts. I've owned my own animals, and we've got ourselves into some scrapes like that, and I've fallen off a horse a lot, but this country was a little...
I've never fallen off a horse.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't want to say that at any point in time while I was in BC because I know as soon as I opened my mouth, I was going to get pitched off that day.
I
But
fell
so
off.
far, it's still like a fear of mine.
I fell off a number of times.
You had like 3 that day.
Yeah. Yeah. My horse went down. Okay. It just went down. Like I can't, you know, some horses, like I was watching Great White, you know, Barclow's horse. The thing is so powerful that it could do things that my horse just can't do. You know, my horse is trying to hold me up and he just doesn't have the strength. But yeah, my horse just slid down that hill that first time and hit my head and was a little concussed. No big deal. I got back on. But that time he crawled up, he tried to walk up the rock, like slab of rock, which I knew was not going to be good, and he just flipped under.
Oh, when I was right behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I managed to get off him and up that rock
Like a cat.
without getting crushed under him. I was like, and I knew it was going to happen before it happened. You know, he was just so eager to get out of the mud, and then the horses stopped, and there was no landing place for him.
Yep.
And he wanted out of the mud, and then he tried to go up the rock, and I'm like, we're going down. And I could feel him starting to slip, and then it was like jump. So I've learned from experience, you don't shove those boots too far into the stirrups, or you're going to go down with the horse.
Yeah.
You really need to be ready to pull out. I mean, one of the things that I think where people get hurt the worst is on a horse is where they let that foot slip through the stirrup. Mm-hmm. No heel on your boot or whatever, and man, that horse takes off and you're dead. I mean,
I can't imagine.
That's not a good place to be.
That's like the first thing they tell you anytime you get on a horse. Mm-hmm. Like I remember being told that as a kid when I'd go ride my aunt's horses. Just like, okay, it makes sense. And it's been grilled into me my entire life. Like
Mine too.
Anytime I get on a horse, it's the first thing I think of, like heels down.
And I told Keith, and Keith stuck it way in there the first time. So at some point in the trip, and then when he was getting off his horse, he didn't have that foot ready to slip out, right? He had it shoved way in there. So he got off the horse, but his foot was stuck in the stirrup.
Oh, no way.
And then he's hopping on one leg, trying to get it off, and the horse starts walking away pretty quick. And that's where, you can just get drugged at that point, so
that would be so
I'm like, Keith, you gotta have that, just your toe in there as you come off that horse and get on. But I just noticed that was, I was telling you earlier, I can't feel my big toe. It's starting to come back on my right foot, my left foot.
Just from frost nip, you think?
No, I don't think it was the cold at all.
Oh.
I don't think it had anything to do with the cold.
That's right, because Cash was talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying that's a common reaction to, like, you said Keith is the same way?
Keith is worse than me.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. So if you're riding, in the stirrups, and especially for me, I was using the saddle Tanis made it, and the stirrups are homemade.
No way.
Yeah. So she's handy.
I wish I had looked at it a little closer.
Those chaps are hers too.
That doesn't surprise me.
But when she made them, she made that saddlebags. She made all those as well. So she's a talented little lady.
I hope they come true with their Utah trip.
Oh, me too. I just was on the phone with Doran yesterday.
Oh, really?
So I'm going to go up there in January and hit the ski hill. I'm going to do some snurfing.
Attaboy.
So I'm looking forward to that. But it's not that far. It's like 10 hours from here. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to bomb up there and spend some time in Fernie.
Yep.
So, but my, the stirrup had a little guard in the front, so you can't slip your foot too far in the stirrup, The
tapaderos?
That's what they're called, right?
Yeah. I learned that on the first trip.
and so, in fact, she's like, yeah, I did them wrong. And they're really for me and not for other people. And so I could only put my big toe and my second toe, like I could only barely get my toe. I couldn't extend them past just the front of the stirrup. So I didn't have much purchase in the stirrups to begin with. And then the horses were in such sketchy terrain, you're always riding at the ready. Like the legs were kind of stiff and you're applying pressure to the stirrup so you could maneuver at any time. And when you're going up and down, you're engaging in those stirrups a lot. And so what I read was pressure on those toes cause the nerves and stuff to deaden.
Huh.
And
be like skier's toe.
Mm-hmm. And they said, and Keith said that he would get that all the time from skiing.
Yeah.
And it would take weeks for his feeling to come back.
I think it takes a long time. Anytime you do nerve damage, it's like the slowest growing cell in your body.
Dude, I could not feel. And so now I'm just getting to where I can kind of feel it. And
how are your guts?
I'm not happy with the toe thing, though. That's creepy. I don't like not feeling my feet.
Yeah. How are your guts doing?
Fine.
Hart and I both ended up with Giardia.
Did you?
I just got over it yesterday.
Really?
Yeah. I had to get drugs and
get some from the doctor.
Yeah. But I'm wondering how many other, Barklow's fine too, and I was wondering how many people other from that trip, because it had to have been the second one, because typical incubation is like 8 to 10 days.
I've had Giardia a number of times, and I've never gone to the doctor for it.
Really? You've gutted it?
Yep. So I've had it, the last time I had it was with Snyder and last year when we were goat hunting, and we got it really bad. Aaron lost like 25 pounds. I lost like almost 20 pounds. When I started the season, I was like 195, And within a month of the goat hunt, I was 175 and just skinny. Got down to 171 at one point. So last year crushed us. Aaron went to the doctor and got meds. I just wrote it out. And
it's like 2 weeks, isn't it?
And I got better than him, faster than him without the meds. What I think happens, though, is you get it enough times, and I've had it in the past as well, and your immune system sort of just gets ahead of it. I think you develop some capability against it. I don't know. I just know I've been able to get past it without anything.
And you're not. I wonder what your symptoms would be compared to mine. Were gnarly.
Stomach pains and
like cramping. Like anytime I ate, like I just didn't want to eat anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then just.
That's how it was last year.
Explosive.
This year, I mean, I may have. Everything's been solid.
Nothing on the back end.
I've, since I've been back, I've not been eating. I've been eating super clean and bland, just because my guts are a little, if I eat something heavy, I get a little bit of stomach pain. But I just know, like, if I stick to clean eating, mostly veggies and some meat and stuff, that I'll get good on my own in a short time.
Yeah. But
no, I didn't get sick at all this time. But you guys went on a different route than us, although Barklow was with you the whole time.
Yeah, I would have. Yeah. I mean, I've talked to my buddies, the infectious disease doc at IMC, and so I talked to him a lot about it. And I like my like theories. He's like, no, those are all wrong. But they did say that most people, it's just like bloating. Giardia affects most people with just like like bloating and like minor stomach cramps. Where
that's what I've had.
Major stomach cramps, and I was like exploding out my back end.
That's how Aaron was.
And like to the point like I can't function,
Yeah. It shut him down.
Yeah, it shuts me down. Which the very first time I had it, I dealt with it for like 2 weeks before I figured out what it was, and I was on an elk hunt with Kendall, and he had just shot a bull. The other dude I was with was like, "You have Giardia." I'm positive.
Yeah. I think I got it a lot as a kid. I mean, we drank out of some nasty things. We lived out in the boonies in Oregon City, and I think I just got it a lot as a kid. Different strains,
sure.
It's different everywhere, but we were drinking the water. I was drinking the water like you guys, same camps, same everything.
So I didn't,
But interesting.
It only takes one little bug. Right?
Yeah. Did Dustin's crew get it at all?
Yeah, I haven't hit him up about it. I keep forgetting.
I think Candace and Dorn are immune.
I would assume so. I think they're immune to a lot of things.
I think so too.
They're going to be studied in the future.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, the first time I had it, the other two, we were drinking out of a stream caribou hunting in Alaska. The other two people I was with, we drank the same water the whole time. They didn't get it. Like it's not like it's constantly in the water supply. You just get one little parasite in you, and then it just multiplies and goes for it.
Yeah, I got mine when we were goat hunting last year. It wasn't from as far as we know, it wasn't from the lakes and the rivers and such. They had a cistern that captured water that hadn't been used, and it was stagnant with stagnant pools of water, and they pumped the water out but pumped new water in. And the longer you were in the camp with the cabins, the more sick you got. When you left, you got a reprieve because it was the source of the Giardia was right there in the holding tanks.
Right. Yeah.
So, what are your plans for the rest of this hunting season?
I still have archery elk tag, archery deer tag, and a rifle cow tag.
Archery elk tag?
Just your general.
In Montana?
No, all here in Utah.
Oh. Really?
So I've had 2 days elk hunting and 2 days deer hunting. But so I need to, I'll put the time in for my deer tag and typically get a deer in Utah.
Yeah.
Actually, this would be my first year I didn't. I also had never been gone this much during a hunting season. My archery elk tag is, I leave that to myself as my fun tag. Like, I love hunting bull elk, especially when they're rutting.
Yeah.
And I've never killed an elk with my bow. And when that happens, it is going to be the right animal at the right time. And so, like, I've eaten that tag every year in Utah, and I'll continue to eat it until I get the right one. I could have shot lots of cows and calves, and that's fine, and small bulls, but I also don't want that tag I want to be able to hunt that whole season, because I don't get to hunt for myself a lot during the season. But that being said, we only eat stuff we kill, so we need to put meat in the freezer. So my son and I both have cow tags this year, and my son and my wife didn't get deer during the rifle deer season here, so my freezer looks horrible right now. And I hunt a lot of birds. I love chukar hunting.
Yeah.
It's probably one of my favorite things on the planet to do. Yeah,
you're glutton for punishment.
I was out yesterday. I'm going tomorrow.
It's funny.
And my dog is.
Go ahead.
My dog is. She needs it, and so I try to balance it. Like I'll hunt chukar one day and then go hunt deer the next day and elk, and then go back and forth when I'm home. And with all that, I have to edit the last 3 months of hunting photos.
Do you do a lot of post editing?
I mean, everything I shoot's in RAW, right? So there's
some minor tweaks,
minimal editing, but I mean, you have to go through a RAW photo doesn't look like this,
right.
You have to go through and, add contrast and add sharpening or saturation or whites and darks. And so there's like the basic adjust, but that's kind of it. Like I don't even own Photoshop. I'm not a digital artist in any way whatsoever.
Right.
I come from the slide days where you shoot it right the first time and you're done.
Yeah.
And I do love
that's kind of different than a lot of guys today.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I was a holdout too for a long time to switching to digital until I had clients that started asking me I started getting photo requests that said we're no longer taking slides anymore, and I'm like, oh, time to switch to digital. That was at the same time that corresponded with when the Canon 5D
You're
came
old,
out.
dude.
I know. When that Canon 5D came out, it was the first camera, I believe it was 12 megapixels, that had a resolution that was similar to a slide scan.
Yeah.
Because that was my issue with it. I'm like, well, I don't want to take all these photos that are going to be worse resolution than these slides I have. Because those early digital cameras were like 2 and 4 megapixels.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't want to go on some rad trip and shoot 2 megapixel images and like come back and I could have shot slides that could be blown up for billboards,
Yeah.
And so that was those two corresponding was like my switching to digital. And I just went, I haven't shot since the day I got that 5D. I have not taken a single slide since that day. I just went full bore, full in. I'm in, this is the way. And then it was really nice not paying for film and processing, but computers and hard drives are way more expensive.
No doubt. I wanted to ask you about your boots, your crispy boots. So you and Barclow had the Windrock or
Windrock, I believe. Yeah, that's the 400 grams of insulation.
Yeah.
And
because I have the Crispy Nevada Legend. I've used that for like 4 years. Yeah, and it's insulated. I think it was their highest insulated boot until this one.
Yeah, Wild Rock.
Wild Rock?
I think it's the Wild Rock.
Wild Rock. So I asked Barclow, what do you think of the boot? And he's like, well, Brian, I can honestly say this is the first like late season cold weather hunt I've ever been on where I have not, honestly, my feet have not been something I've even thought about. I'm like, because I can't feel my toes. And Keith had a pair of Brickstalls. And they have less insulation than mine. And
they have no insulation.
Yeah. And so Keith was struggling, especially get on those horses with frozen boots and you're in those stirrups and the wind's blowing and it's cold. and you're not moving. You're not walking.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe, there's also some coldness that got to my feet a little bit. That's part of the issue with my toes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's primarily the pressure. That's what I read. But still, what were your thoughts on those boots?
I loved them.
They weren't too hot?
Nope. Excellent question. No, I never got. I mean, there was a few days we were standing for forever in the snow, and I don't think they got cold in the saddle at all. It was a snow day. They got a little chilly because Cole was freaking out how cold it was going to be for our stone sheep hunt.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I got a hold of Kendall and got these boots. And then Barklow showed up with them randomly. I didn't know he was going to have them. And we actually, Cole and I both got made fun of because we showed up for our stone sheep hunt and we both had they were shiny. Neither one of us had ever even put them on before.
Right.
And they're like, you're going on a sheep hunt with brand new boots? And it's like, dude, good boots. There is a little bit of break in time, but that's not as big of an issue as it used to be 10, 15 years ago.
Totally.
Right? And it depends on your feet. I rarely get blisters. I rarely have foot issues.
You rarely wear anything.
I rarely wear shoes.
Right. It's
I live in flip-flops.
Signature flip-flops.
There was a long point in my life where it was like ski boots, flip-flops, or climbing shoes. That's all I would wear,
Yeah.
But no, so I think my feet are pretty chill, so that makes a big difference too as far as blisters go. My sister can't. Any boot she puts on, she gets blisters and her feet fall asleep. And
my feet are tough. I don't generally deal with them or worry about them too much. But on this hunt, they got cold a few times.
Yeah. Well, it's cold.
Mm-hmm. For
for a hunt, cold's different when you can move.
Right.
Anything I've done in the past in the cold, you're moving constantly,
right.
Where hunting, you're sitting and glassing for long periods of time or sitting in the saddle. And I'm very glad I got those boots because, my toes I could feel the cold a few times, but I never got cold. And I think it was because of the extra insulation. So I'm glad I got them.
Yeah, I want to check them out because this year, this was on that particular, and normally I'm hiking, backpack hunting, late season like this, and I'll stop for an hour or 2 or 3 hours and we'll kind of sit in a spot, but then we're hiking. We're just walking. Mm-hmm. On this hunt, I was on a horse or standing still most of the time. I just didn't move that much.
It's different footwear issues. Yeah,
totally.
You need it's not sheep hunting in August.
No.
This is moose hunting in
yeah, and I was like, man, that was rough. I want to get, the other thing I noticed was when I treated the leather on my Nevadas, it kept the water from soaking into the leather. Mm-hmm. And just because I put that on early September, by the time we got deep into this hunt, you're walking through snow and cold water and rivers and all that. And then you're putting your boots by the fire and they're drying out. And that leather got pretty thoroughly saturated with water, which was fine. It didn't bother me. I slipped my boots on in the morning. My feet are bone dry because the inside is still dry. It's still Gore-Tex lined. It's insulated. But then I got on that horse, and about an hour and a half into our ride, the boot was frozen.
Yep.
The actual leather froze, and that took me to a new height of misery.
You got to think of leather's fairly thick, right? And if you all of a sudden there's not that much insulation on your foot, and when that's frozen as well, it's frozen. Then that can't help your temperature.
No, it was like an ice boot, and it weighed more. So I'm like, that's something I take away from this is, treat my boots so that leather is repellent.
Especially on a hunt like that, I struggle with treating boots when it's bow season.
Oh yeah,
I just feel like it's just another scent that I don't want on, and there were years I was really good, and I'd do it in July and leave them outside, just outside of my house, and they'd be fine, right?
Yeah.
But this was not
the
case. Well, mine were brand new, so I didn't have any of those issues. But my crispy guides, those things need a layer of insulation or a water treatment bad, and I wore them on this deer hunting this last week. And they were saturated every day, and the leather never dried out, and it's my fault for not treating them.
And normally it's not a big deal. I don't notice it, but this was exceptionally cold.
Yeah.
I'm looking through this catalog here because I saw it the other day. I'm curious, too. You had a piece of kit that I didn't have, which was that big down.
Oh, the Calvin Down Windstopper hoodie.
Yeah, what do they call it?
It's like 6 different names of awesome.
Right, it was like the WS.
Yeah, so
Isn't
that
it in
stands
here?
for Windstopper.
Is that it right there? Kelvin Down WS hoodie. So Windstopper
hoodie. Yeah. So
hoodie.
in the past, this year they changed it. So it was just a waterproof down. I don't really know the exact fill. I think it was 800 fill down, and it was these big baffles, and it was a great piece. Period. But if it was howling wind, you could feel it through the coat. So then they put Windstopper this year on the outside, and man, did that make a difference. I'm assuming the jacket probably weighs a touch more, but the amount of warmth, because it used to be I'd have to put my raincoat over top of it in like really windy situation. Most of the time, if you don't have to deal with wind, it's not a big deal. But that jacket was unreal.
I've always been a fan of the Kafaru Lost Park Parka. Mm-hmm. It's got a wind stopper built into it, and it's got a similar synthetic down profile. You cannot hike in it well at all because it's got zero breathability. Mm-hmm. And so curious, but it was warm and the wind stopper was everything.
Yep.
My question on this right here is, you wore it. I put it on and I've worn it around just testing it out, but how did it feel as far as, you being able to move around in it? Pretty warm.
Yeah, puffies for me, like from back in the mountaineering days, like when you stop, you put a puffy on. When you start moving, you take it off.
Yeah.
That's just like the rule of thumb, right? Like, 'cause you don't want to overheat. But this hunt was so sedentary, like being on a horse and then getting off and glassing, like I never took it off. Or like, I'll leave it on if we're glassing for a long time and it's cold, I'll leave it on and start hiking until I warm up, and then I'll take it off and deal with it. But the piece is not designed to be like a breathable piece. You know? It's designed to I like to call it the napper. It's designed to put that thing on, you put that hood up, and you fall asleep in the wicked cold. And that's,
Well, the first I heard about this was from Adam Yonke, and he and Nolan and Dustin Rowe had gone goat hunting, and they filmed that towing the line. And he was like, "Boom, this jacket was off the charts. It was legit." So I'm going to try it. I have a late season elk hunt rifle.
I took that thing to Alaska dull sheep hunting in August. There's any cold at all, that thing comes with me.
Yeah.
For sure. I'll take the extra weight over the Calvin Light hoodie. Yeah. It's just, man.
It's hard for me to not use the Calvin Light because it's so comfortable when I'm even moving. And with the Calvin Light vest added to it.
Yeah, I'm not a vest guy. I think maybe that's part of my deal. That makes more sense now how you would like the Calvin Light jacket.
I just like vests because when I have a vest on and the core is hot, I don't need sleeves. I don't need as much. I get away with a lot less jacket.
Mm-hmm. You walk around in tank tops all
pretty much sleeveless, keep hammering.
Just keep the guns out.
That's right. Well, dude, I'm glad you came down today. Yeah. I wanted to get you in the podcast because you're an interesting man.
Super interesting. It's amazing we did this in an hour.
Yeah. Well, the thing is I still am you have so many good relationships in this space, and socially it feels like you get along with so many people. And like I said, it was a pleasure to have you in camp. And often and that's my biggest concern when somebody shows up that I don't know. Are they going to ruin the hunting experience? Right? Are they just going to be the turd in camp that makes everything stink?
Yeah.
And so, no. And are they going to be soft? There I could see a lot of people. That hunt on the way out, the horseback, just throughout the week, it was not for the faint of heart.
No, just what would we end up in 10 hours on a horse?
Mm-hmm.
That's hard for a cowboy. Mm-hmm. Much less some dudes who have been in the saddle for 10 days.
And they were amazing.
Yeah.
Those Blythe.
Yeah.
Watching her ride a horse.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
They all clearly have something.
Wow. It's like, were you just born and on it your whole life?
I think it's a true passion, right? It was like you could see it. Like she just, they all love it.
The horse just went places she told it to go in such a stylish fashion. And her horse had that braided tail that all came down, and she's got like the elven jacket, thing going on with the hood, and she looked like something out of Lord of the Rings. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Totally.
Yeah, it was a cool crew up there.
It was a great crew. Unbelievable. Now, that many people to deal with what we dealt with on the way out, and no one complained. Everyone just went through it and dealt
so
with
many
it.
characters.
And,
So
good trip for sure.
Yep. All right, folks, we're going to end this podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Gritty Podcast. As always, leave us a review on iTunes. Look up J Beyer Imaging on Instagram.
Please. Yep.
At J Beyer Imaging.
Yep. Facebook. I'm on Facebook as well.
You have a website?
No Twitter. Yep. jbeyer.com.
jbeyer.com.
Beyer.
Yep.
JAYBEYER.
Yep. Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Stay gritty. Despite our ever-changing, ever-indignant world with its growing ignorance of and indifference to the ways of the wild, I remain a predator, pitying those who revel in artificiality and synthetic success while regarding me and my kind as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood. I stalk a real world of dark wood and tall grass stirred by a restless wind blowing across sunlit water and beneath star-strewn sky. And on those occasions when I choose to kill, to claim some small part of nature's bounty for my own, I do so by choice, quickly, with the learned efficiency of a skilled hunter. Further, in my heart and mind, I know the truth and make no apologies for my actions or my place in time. Others around me may opt to eat only plants, nuts, and fruits. Still others may employ faceless strangers to procure their meats, their leather, their feathers, and all those niceties and necessities of life. Such is their right, of course, and I wish them well. All I ask in return is no one begrudge me, and all of us who may answer the primordial stirrings within our hunter souls, my right to do some of these things myself. What you just heard is a quote from M.R. James. We truly live in a world that is largely ignorant and indifferent to the ways of the wild. And although some regard us as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood, we have the opportunity to change the way these people view the hunter and the hunt. We can share our experiences and nature's bounty with those who employ these faceless strangers. And by so doing, we make a difference, not just for ourselves, but for the wild animals and the wild places we care so deeply about. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting and the outdoors. Our wild animals and our wild places depend on it.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.